Welcome to the I Now Pronounce You Divorced podcast, where we have three award-winning family law attorneys dive into intriguing topics like divorce, military divorce, custody and visitation, trust and estate planning, and all things family law. Join us as we provide a comprehensive viewpoint through the eyes of our experts and guests, aiming to educate and soothe our listeners. Get ready to tune in because I Now Pronounce You Divorced starts right now.
Yeah, I'm listening to this and I'm hearing, instead of weaponizing the alcohol problem, it's treating it as a disease. And for those who are listening, whether they're attorneys or clients going through this or whomever is tuning in, that this really is just about accountability and moving forward and treating it. It's just that you're taking your medicine, you're blowing into this device because we all want to get better. And the only way to do that, to really acknowledge there is an issue, this is a disease, and this is how I'm going to treat it, as opposed to many cases I've been involved in. They really try to use it against the parent and try to take away custody when at the end of the day, if someone wants to get better, that's the child or the children that are the victims.
You're absolutely right. And I always want to make sure that people understand that, even our technology can be weaponized. So be very mindful that our best practices suggest, 2 to 3 tests is really the average of a per day. 4 tests being the max, but I do see some orders that come in where they're asking for 6 to 7 tests a day. And at that point, it just gets impossible for that person to be compliant all the time. And it just ruins the whole effectiveness of the program itself. So be mindful of that as well.
So you've talked about your sort of recommended schedule is that 2 to 3 tests a day. What's the range that you all offer or recommend? Like how low is the lowest one and how high is kind of the highest one?
So are you talking about frequency? Are you talking about testing frequency?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So you at least have to have 2 tests per day, and then we would recommend testing right as you wake up and then right as you go to bed. Those are the 2 tests that have to happen. I see some orders that come through where it's like, I have 1 test a day and I'm like, probably shouldn't even be using this. It doesn't really make sense that would even make any, progress in the relationship of saying that I trust that you're not using or abusing alcohol. So at least 2 tests a day. That's the minimum. 4 tests for those high risk cases. But they also talked about best practices around duration. And they say about a year of monitoring and having compliant behavior over time, over that 1 year period, you're seeing a cognitive change in behavior. And these maybe poor decisions are being substituted for good decisions, where it means I'm blowing into a SoberLink device and I am blowing compliant, kind of that Pavlovian, like I'm being rewarded with parenting time. We see that. That's kind of how it all, works out. And then they're less likely to relapse over after that 1 year of compliant behavior.
As like the legalization of marijuana, is there anything on the forefront? Because, I know people say, oh, you can't abuse marijuana. I've heard that before. Yeah. But anything that is a substance that you use to slow yourself down is probably subject to being abused. Is there any technologies coming down the road that's going to say, hey, we can now test for marijuana in the breath?
Yeah, I think technology is coming. There's colleges that are working on it now, a couple labs that are working on technology. It's not quite to the point where it's something that's remote, like alcohol monitoring with SoberLink that you can carry with you and test on a schedule. But I think it's coming. I think the real challenges around it is kind of what you were alluding to, where it's like, how much is too much and where do we get to the acceptance of legalized marijuana, and what is acceptable for parenting. That really hasn't been defined yet. So it's still kind of a wild, wild west with marijuana, I think, and that's going to be a tough one going forward. We hope that we can be part of that solution someday, but you got to wait for that technology to kind of get there and legislation to decide on where legal limits are and what is the protocol for that. So we're kind of wait and see approach right now.
When someone is blowing into that device, where is that information sent? Because if I'm on the other side and I want access, is it sent to an app? Do I have to log in somewhere? Do I get a notification? Could you maybe walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, so everything is sent to a secure web portal that we store at SoberLink, and it is stored there along with the photo that was taken to validate the facial recognition software, and then it's all put onto a report that we call advanced reporting. And that report is sent out to individuals on a daily, weekly, or monthly, depending on how they want those reports sent. By default, the co-parent gets a daily, well, they get real-time results, and then they get a daily report of all the testing that happened. And then they get a weekly report via email, and then like a monthly. Anyone that's an additional contact on the monitoring program, like an attorney or a GAL, they would get something that would be more weekly and then monthly. So not so much noise coming to their inbox. This kind of gets reduced. But if they would like to see, real-time results, they can always contact me or our customer service team, and then we can change their alerts to the frequency that they would like to see it.
You talked about using this system to build or to rebuild trust. How do you think that plays in when it comes to custody and co-parenting and building these family relationships?
I think it's everything. I think it's really what we're all after. We want a co-parents that can work together in an amicable way that then can parent this child in a way that, gives them the best opportunity for success going forward and to become that adult that both parents want them to become. I mean, again, I would go back to my family and I'm thinking, gosh, what am I doing today to make these kids the best adults that they possibly can be in the future? And, I can only imagine if we were separated, how difficult that would be. So what are the things that we need to squash to make sure that trust is earned back, that we can get back to where we were, and we can raise these kids to be great adults and productive members of society going forward, right? And, the last thing I want to see is someone taken away from, my wife taken away from my kids, or me taken away from my kids because I have a disease. And so we're trying to make that happen, trying to make sure that doesn't happen, that, our technology can prevent that from happening. Both parents are staying in the relationship, and we're getting to that end game where we are seeing amicable relationships going forward.
I love data. I mean, anytime you're in a family law case and you can get away from he said, she said, and they said, and you can say, look, here's the actual data. My client or the other side does have a problem or doesn't have a problem, and we don't have to question it. I think is amazing. Have you seen, and you talked about an increase in business through COVID, and I would say that is, but have you seen an increase in judges wanting to rely on this type of data? Like, where maybe the parties were a little bit, and I know you don't get into the actual minutia of the case, but just seeing more and more court orders versus agreements coming through.
Well, I think I do see that, judges are kind of that final, like they're the final person that helps protect that kid. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, if there's a technology that they believe or a monitoring program, whether it's SoberLink or something else, they're going to recommend that a technology be used to protect that kid and also to keep those parents somehow communicating effectively to parent that. So, yeah, I do think it's something that, judges are looking for. They're trying to, see if there's something out there that will work. And, we consider ourselves kind of that technology that gets referred most, but it actually doesn't come from the judge. Typically, it comes from the attorneys that agree to use our technology because they believe in it and they've used it before, typically in the past.
For the clients who participate and use SoberLink, how many of them remain on it versus once they kind of graduate from whatever defined amount of time they were ordered or agreed to be on it, do they remain on?
Gosh, that's a great question. In family law, it might be a little different than our treatment model, right? Treatment model, we might have people getting off and then maybe they relapse and then they come back to us. In family law, we don't see so much of the comebacks. Once they're on it for a certain amount of time, which right now, we say in our best practices, it's 1 year, but our data suggests that 8 months is our average use case right now. We see maybe a small percentage, maybe it's about 5% of people are actually coming back and using the technology. But, it's something that, in a lot of cases is ordered. And when that's ordered, when the order is finished, people tend not to want to come back to something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
In family law cases, when someone is committed to using this technology for the next year or however long, what are they also doing in conjunction to be successful with this program?
It really depends where they are. I think, we can be someone that starts in the whole denial process, and it could take a long time to get to, where they're actually using it effectively. It can be somewhere where someone's already been in treatment, and then they use SoberLink, and they're like, this is great because now it's helping me, document my sobriety and validate the treatment that I went through. Gosh, there's all sorts of different starting points that you can be at. And, there was a bench card that was put out by the NCJ, FCJ that looked at alcohol use disorder and really supported it being, not a moral failing, making sure that it was, everyone understands that it is the disease. And it talked about, you have the mild, moderate, and severe type cases, and where do you start? What are some of the support things that you can, in conjunction with maybe like monitoring? Monitoring was seen across the board, whether it's high risk, medium risk, or low. We always ended with some type of monitoring program going forward for the parenting time or access period. But if you have a really severe case of someone that, I've heard of some cases where people are just, we hear the term, it's not a really good term, but functioning alcoholic. And at points they need actual, detox from SoberLink, probably a medical detox, just to stabilize their brain, to make better decisions going forward. So before they even get anywhere, we got to get them in a place where they can make good decisions going forward. And that's super important. So yeah, that's a support group. There's AA, there's smart care, that you can do. And Al-Anon for the family members that can help, understand what person's going through that's struggling with alcohol. So there's a lot of different things out there that can be in conjunction with SoberLink or other monitoring programs to help that client move forward.
Chris, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us about something that I love, and that's data. Anytime a practitioner can come to court with hard data in their hand and say this is or is not happening, it is invaluable in these cases. What is the best site for our listeners to go to learn more about SoberLink?
Sure. So we have a really robust marketing site at SoberLink.com. You can start there, go to our family law section. We have different markets that we participate in. We're in about 250 treatment facilities across the country. We're the continued care arm. Instead of doing anecdotal, hey, I'm not drinking, it's real data, like you suggested, Charles. So yeah, just make sure you choose family law. It goes through all the different programs, the pricing and best practices, and how it's going to benefit you and your situation at hand. So your clients can learn a lot just by going there.
They can. And like we discussed, sometimes it's used to show that you're not drinking against the allegations. And sometimes it's used to help get you through an issue so that you can get back to that parenting time. So I really want to thank you for talking to us today. This has been I Now Pronounce You Divorce. And if you or someone is going through the divorce process or just thinking about it, give Malone Hatley PC a call and see the difference that a partner can make for your case.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. If you found this episode helpful and you want more informational content, please be sure to subscribe and join us on all major social media platforms, including YouTube. Stay connected for more exciting updates and tips.